The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its transparent walls revealing the swirling nebulae of the Andromeda Core. Representatives from 47 species sat in carefully arranged atmospheric pods, each environment tailored to their biological needs. The air hummed with translation devices converting thousands of languages into comprehensible communication. Ambassador Zethkar of the Hegemony Coalition stood at the central podium, his forearms gesturing dramatically as his scaled hide shifted from deep purple to aggressive crimson. At nearly 4 meters tall, he commanded attention from every delegation present. His species, the Vorthak, had dominated galactic politics for over 3 millennia through a combination of superior technology, strategic alliances, and carefully calculated intimidation. Esteemed colleagues, Zethkar's voice boomed through the chamber's acoustic systems. We gather today to address a most unusual petition. A species from what they call Earth seeks membership in our council. His words dripped with barely concealed amusement. They claim to represent a world they describe as challenging. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The insectoid Klaxi delegation clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. The gaseous ethereals pulsed with colors indicating skepticism. Even the normally diplomatic Centaurian Federation representatives exchanged meaningful glances through their crystalline eye stalks. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the designated visitors section, her small form dwarfed by the massive alien delegates surrounding her. At barely 1.6 meters tall and weighing perhaps 60 kilograms, she appeared insignificant among beings who casually measured their mass in tons. Her simple black diplomatic suit contrasted sharply with the elaborate ceremonial armor, bioluminescent displays, and energy field projections worn by other ambassadors. Beside her sat what most delegates assumed was some sort of primitive companion animal. The creature appeared unremarkable, covered in short brown and black fur, with floppy ears and a constantly wagging tail. It panted quietly, occasionally looking up at Sarah with obvious affection. To the assembled aliens, it seemed like nothing more than a pet, perhaps brought for emotional support during what was clearly going to be a humiliating rejection. Let us examine the claims made by this Earth delegation, Zethkar continued, activating a massive holographic display above the chamber. They describe their world as having extreme temperature variations, ranging from -40 to +50 degrees Celsius. They speak of atmospheric storms with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. They mention seismic activity that can devastate entire continents. The display showed a rotating image of Earth, a small blue and green sphere that looked almost pastoral compared to the harsh volcanic worlds, gas giants, and radiation-blasted planets that most council species called home. Furthermore, Zethkar's hide now shifted to a color indicating smug superiority. They claim their gravity exceeds standard galactic measurements by nearly 40%. They describe atmospheric pressures that would supposedly challenge even our most robust species. He paused for effect. Yet look at their representative. Does this fragile creature appear to have survived the crucible of a true Deathworld? Laughter erupted from multiple delegations. The Thermic Consortium's representative, a being of living molten rock, actually cracked apart momentarily in what passed for mirth among his people. The crystalline Sharai delegation created harmonic frequencies that hurt everyone's auditory sensors, their equivalent of uncontrollable giggling. Sarah remained perfectly still, her expression neutral. Her companion animal continued panting, tail still wagging as if completely unaware of the mockery filling the chamber. Honored speaker, came a new voice from the Aquatic Alliance's pod. Ambassador Jelthara, a serpentine being with bioluminescent scales, undulated through her water-filled chamber. Perhaps we should hear what this human has to say before we pass judgment. The council has procedures, after all. Of course, Zethkar replied, his tone making it clear this was merely a formality. Let us hear from the representative of this supposedly deadly world. Sarah stood slowly, her movements precise and controlled. As she walked toward the speaking platform, several delegates noted that despite her apparent fragility, she moved with an odd confidence, like a predator conserving energy for a strike. Honored delegates, Sarah began, her voice calm and measured despite the obvious hostility in the chamber. I understand your skepticism. By galactic standards, humans appear unimpressive. We are small, soft-skinned creatures from what you consider a moderate world. Exactly, boomed the Titan Collective's representative, a massive being of living stone and metal. We have seen the scans of your homeworld. Comfortable temperatures, breathable atmosphere, liquid water. You describe difficulties that would barely challenge a Centaurian child, let alone a true Deathworld species. Your gravity, added the Klaxi Queen speaker, her voice a symphony of clicks and chirps, is less than that of our nursery worlds. Your atmospheric pressure would not even trigger our environmental suit's protective protocols. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. You're absolutely correct about the measurements. Earth's conditions are indeed within the range that most council species would find manageable, at least on the surface. She paused, looking around the chamber with eyes that seemed to catalogue every delegate present. But, perhaps the true test of a death world isn't just its environmental parameters. Oh? Zethkar leaned forward, clearly anticipating an easy refutation. Then, what would you say defines a true death world, human? The number of different ways it tries to kill you, Sarah replied simply. And, more importantly, how that shapes the creatures that survive there. The chamber fell silent for a moment, processing this unexpected response. Elaborate, commanded the hegemony speaker, his hide shifting to colors indicating irritation at not immediately dismissing the human's argument. Sarah activated her own much smaller holographic projector. The image it created was modest compared to the council's massive displays, but clear enough for all to see. It showed Earth again, but this time zooming in on different regions. Earth doesn't just have extreme weather, she began. It has dozens of different types of extreme weather, often occurring simultaneously in different regions. While one continent experiences temperatures that would freeze most life solid, another endures heat that would cook it alive. We have electrical storms that can power small cities, tornado systems that carve new landscapes, and hurricanes that dump more water than many worlds see in a year. The display shifted to show ocean depths. Our waters contain creatures that dwarf most galactic fauna. Beings with toxins that could kill a Vorthak in minutes. Predators that have remained unchanged for millions of years because they achieved perfect killing efficiency. Impressive local fauna, acknowledged the Aquatic Alliance representative, but many worlds, that's just the beginning, Sarah interrupted, her voice remaining level despite the breach of protocol. Earth's true challenge isn't any single threat. It's that every square meter of our planet hosts multiple overlapping ecosystems, each one trying to consume everything else. We have microscopic organisms that can dissolve bone, plant life that actively hunts animals, weather patterns that can change from deadly cold to deadly heat within hours. The chamber was growing quieter, delegates beginning to lean forward despite themselves. But, the real test, Sarah continued, is that we don't just survive on Earth. We thrive. We've adapted to every environment our world offers. Humans live permanently in Arctic conditions that would kill most of you in minutes without environmental suits. We've built cities in deserts where the air itself is toxic to many species. We've created settlements on the sides of active volcanoes. Adaptation is admirable, Zethkar said, though his tone had lost some of its earlier mockery, but it hardly proves. Sarah held up a hand, and something in the gesture made the massive alien pause. Ambassador Zethkar, what do your people do when faced with a natural disaster? We respond with appropriate technology and evacuation procedures, he replied, confused by the question. And, when your technology fails? We have redundant systems, backup protocols, but when everything fails? When your people face raw, uncontrolled nature with nothing but their bodies and minds? Zethkar's hide shifted to colors indicating uncertainty. Such scenarios are extremely rare in civilized space. On Earth, Sarah said quietly, such scenarios are called Tuesday. She gestured to her companion animal, who had been sitting patiently throughout the exchange. This is Rex. He's what humans call a German Shepherd, a working dog. His ancestors were wolves, pack hunters that survived Earth's ice ages, adapted to nearly every climate our world offers, and learned to work with humans to thrive in environments that would challenge either species alone. The dog Rex looked up at the mention of his name, tail wagging slightly faster. Rex weighs 35 kilograms. He can run 50 kilometers per hour, track sense across distances that would require most of your species to use technological enhancement, and has bite force sufficient to crush bones. His hearing extends into frequency ranges most of you can't detect. His night vision surpasses many species evolved for nocturnal hunting. Several delegates were now studying the animal with new interest, their translation devices working to process unfamiliar biological terminology. But Rex, Sarah continued, is not a wild predator. He's a domesticated animal. Bred by humans for companionship and work. On Earth, he's considered a family pet. The kind of animal human children play with safely. The chamber had grown completely silent. The point, honored delegates, is not that Earth is the most hostile world in the galaxy. I'm sure many of your homeworlds present more extreme individual challenges. The point is that Earth created a species that thrives on challenge itself. Humans don't just adapt to hostile environments, we actively seek them out. We climb mountains because they're there. We explore ocean depths because they're unexplored. We've built cities in places that actively try to kill us because we refuse to be limited by environment. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of delegate after delegate. Every human carries the adaptations of a species that survived not just one hostile environment, but dozens of them simultaneously. We're not impressive because we're big or strong or naturally armored. We're impressive because our world taught us that survival isn't about avoiding challenges, it's about meeting them head-on and making them work for us. She gestured again to Rex, who had stood and was now alert, as if sensing the change in the chamber's atmosphere. And we've learned to do this not just as individuals, but as partners. Humans have formed alliances with hundreds of other Earth species. We've domesticated former predators, turned poisonous plants into medicine, and transformed the very challenges that threatened us into tools for expansion. This is all very philosophical, Zethkar interjected, though his earlier confidence had noticeably diminished, but the Council requires concrete demonstrations of capability, not merely. He stopped mid-sentence as Rex's head snapped toward the chamber's eastern entrance. The dog's ears perked forward, and a low growl emerged from his throat, not the playful rumble of a pet, but something deeper and far more threatening. Every human in the chamber immediately tensed, their bodies shifting into alert postures with a speed that caught several alien delegates off guard. Sarah's hand moved instinctively toward her hip, stopping just short of what observers suddenly realized might be a concealed weapon. Rex, Sarah said quietly, what is it? The dog's growl intensified, and now even the alien delegates were beginning to notice something wrong. The chamber's environmental systems had detected an anomaly, and security alerts were beginning to flash on delegate control panels. What happened next would change the Galactic Council's understanding of both humans and the world that created them forever. The chamber's security systems erupted into chaos. Warning lights bathed the crystal walls in pulsing red, and automated voices in dozens of languages announced the same terrifying message: hostile boarding detected. All delegates to emergency positions. Security protocols activated. Rex's growl had transformed into a series of sharp, urgent barks that seemed to cut through even the cacophony of alien panic responses. The dog had positioned himself directly between Sarah and the eastern entrance, his body low and coiled like a spring ready to release devastating force. Sarah's transformation was even more dramatic. The mild-mannered diplomat had vanished, replaced by something that moved with predatory grace and lethal efficiency. She had somehow acquired a weapon. Delegates would later argue about where it had come from, some insisting she must have concealed it, others swearing it had materialized from thin air. What none could dispute was the way she held it, or the cold calculation in her eyes as she assessed the tactical situation. Council security, this is Ambassador Chen. She spoke into a communication device that hadn't been visible moments before. I have Rex alerting on Sector 7 East. Recommend immediate lockdown of that area and sweep for hostile infiltrators. Ambassador, came the panicked reply, our sensors show no intrusion. All security barriers remain intact. Your sensors are wrong, Sarah replied flatly. Rex has detected something your technology missed. Lock down Sector 7 East now, or you'll have casualties. The massive alien delegates were beginning to react to the crisis, but their responses seemed almost comically slow compared to the instant readiness displayed by the two Earth representatives. The Vorthak delegation was still attempting to understand what their instruments were telling them. The Klaxi were discussing response protocols in rapid clicks that their translation systems struggled to process. Even the militaristic Thermic Consortium representatives were following established procedures, checking equipment and consulting emergency manuals. Only the humans had immediately shifted into combat mode. "This is preposterous," Sethkar declared, his hide flashing colors indicating stress and confusion. "The Council's security systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. No infiltrator could possibly." His words were cut off by an explosion that shattered the chamber's eastern wall. Through the breach poured creatures that defy immediate classification. They moved on 6 legs like predatory insects, but their torsos were humanoid, covered in what appeared to be organic armor. Each carried weapons that hummed with energy, and their movements suggested both intelligence and utterly alien thought processes. "Void hunters," gasped the ethereal delegate, his gaseous form flickering with panic colors. "But that's impossible. They were contained in the Forbidden Zone." The creatures that had just invaded the council chamber were nightmare fuel for most galactic civilizations. Void hunters were remnants of an ancient species that had undergone voluntary biological modification to become perfect killing machines. They retained enough intelligence to use technology and plan complex attacks, but had sacrificed empathy, fear, and self-preservation in favor of predatory efficiency. A single Void Hunter was considered capable of eliminating dozens of trained soldiers. The pack that had just breached the chamber's defenses numbered at least 20. The chamber exploded into chaos as delegates scrambled for emergency exits or activated personal defense systems. The Thermic Consortium representatives began glowing white-hot, preparing to unleash their molten rock abilities. The Klaxi Queen Speaker was emitting pheromones that would call her warrior drones. The Vorthak delegation activated personal force shields and drew weapons that crackled with energy. All of these responses followed predictable patterns: defensive measures, calls for backup, establishment of protected positions while waiting for help to arrive. Rex launched himself at the nearest Void Hunter with a snarl that seemed to contain millions of years of evolutionary fury. The alien creature had been advancing on a group of panicked delegates, its weapons charging for what should have been an easy kill. Instead, 35 kilograms of Earth-evolved predator slammed into its center mass with enough force to knock it backward into the chamber wall. The Void Hunter's organic armor cracked under the impact, but, more importantly, the creature experienced something it had been modified never to feel: surprise. Its neural modifications had prepared it for the fighting styles of every known galactic species. Nothing in its programming had anticipated a small, furry creature that attacked with the tactical intelligence of a trained soldier and the ferocity of a wild animal. Rex's jaws clamped down on the hunter's primary weapon arm, and the sound of breaking alien bones echoed through the chamber. The creature tried to shake him off, but the dog had locked his grip with a determination that seemed to transcend mere animal instinct. Every movement the hunter made only allowed Rex to adjust his position and apply more pressure. Meanwhile, Sarah had become something that made even the Void Hunters pause in their advance. She moved through the chaos like liquid death, her weapon firing with precision that bordered on supernatural. Each shot found gaps in alien armor that should have been impossible to target in the swirling melee. More importantly, she was directing the chamber's defense with a tactical awareness that impressed even species bred for warfare. "Klaxi drones, establish crossfire positions along the north wall," she called out while simultaneously putting 3 rounds through a Void Hunter's optical sensors. "Thermic units, use your heat abilities to create a barrier at the main breach. Don't try to kill them, just channel their advance. Vorthak team, I need covering fire while I reach the Council's emergency armory." "You cannot command Council forces," Sethkar objected, even as he followed her suggestions. "You have no authority, I have results," Sarah interrupted, her weapon never stopping its precise fire. "Your authority figures are either dead or running. Right now, I'm the only person in this chamber who's actually fighting instead of just reacting." The battle raged for 17 minutes, though later testimony from delegates would suggest it felt like hours. The Void Hunters had expected to face the typical galactic response to their attacks: panic, confusion, and ineffective resistance until they could complete their objectives and withdraw. Instead, they found themselves fighting a defensive action coordinated by tactics they had never encountered. The human ambassador moved through combat zones as if she could predict enemy movements before they made them. Her companion animal had somehow managed not just to survive the melee, but to eliminate 3 void hunters through a combination of speed, ferocity, and what could only be described as battlefield cunning. Rex had learned to use the chamber's architecture to his advantage, luring hunters into positions where their superior reach became a disadvantage. He would dart behind crystal formations, drawing enemy fire, then attack from unexpected angles while their weapons recycled. More than once, delegates watched in amazement as the dog seemed to coordinate his movements with Sarah's, creating tactical opportunities that neither could have achieved alone. When Council reinforcements finally arrived, elite security forces from 12 different species, they found the Void Hunter attack had been completely repelled. The invaders lay scattered across the chamber floor, some dead, others incapacitated but alive. Not a single Council delegate had been seriously injured, though several were suffering from shock and what human psychologists would recognize as acute stress reactions. Sarah stood in the center of the chamber, her weapon lowered but still ready, checking on wounded delegates with the same clinical efficiency she had displayed during combat. Rex sat beside her, panting heavily but alert, his fur matted with alien blood that was decidedly not his own. "Impossible," whispered the Titan Collective's representative. Void Hunters have never been defeated by anything less than overwhelming firepower and massive casualties. "How?" demanded Zethkar, his hide cycling through colors indicating confusion, respect, and something approaching fear. "Your species lacks the natural armor of the Thermic Consortium, the numerical advantages of the Klaxi, the technological integration of our own people. How did 2 of you accomplish what requires entire military units?" Sarah looked around the chamber, noting the way delegates were staring at her and Rex with expressions that ranged from awe to something approaching terror. "Ambassador Zethkar," she said quietly, "you asked what defines a true Deathworld. It's not extreme temperatures or crushing gravity or toxic atmospheres. Those are just environmental challenges that can be overcome with technology and engineering." She gestured to the fallen Void Hunters scattered around the chamber. "A true Deathworld is one where survival requires you to become something that can think like your prey and fight like your predator simultaneously. A world where cooperation isn't just beneficial, it's mandatory for survival. Where every day presents new challenges that demand creative solutions." Rex barked once, as if agreeing, then returned to scanning the chamber for additional threats. "Earth didn't just create humans," Sarah continued. "It created a species that forms combat partnerships with other species, that can adapt tactics in real time, that treats every fight as a problem to be solved rather than just a contest of strength. The Void Hunters," stammered the ethereal delegate, "they've terrorized the galaxy for centuries. How did your dog know how to fight them?" Sarah smiled for the first time since the attack began, and something about that expression made several delegates unconsciously step backward. "Rex didn't know how to fight Void Hunters specifically," she explained. "But Earth taught his species how to fight everything. How to read body language, how to use terrain, how to turn an opponent's strengths into weaknesses. How to work with a partner to multiply both your capabilities." She looked around the chamber one more time, her gaze settling on each delegation in turn. "The question you should be asking yourselves isn't whether Earth qualifies as a Deathworld. The question is whether you want the species that evolved their fighting beside you, or against you." The chamber fell silent except for the sound of Rex's panting and the distant hum of emergency systems cycling back to normal operation. None of the delegates seemed to have an immediate answer to that question. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 6 hours after the Void Hunter attack. The crystal chamber had been repaired with remarkable efficiency, but the atmosphere remained charged with tension and uncertainty. Representatives who had previously dismissed the human delegation now studied Sarah and Rex with expressions ranging from scientific curiosity to barely concealed nervousness. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the central podium once again, but his posture and coloration had undergone a dramatic transformation. Where before he had radiated smug superiority, now his hide displayed the muted tones of respect mixed with concern. The attack had shaken more than just the chamber's walls, it had fractured long-held assumptions about galactic power dynamics. "Honored colleagues," Zethkar began, his voice lacking its earlier arrogance, "recent events have provided us with unexpected insights into the nature of the species requesting council membership." Murmurs filled the chamber, but they were different from the earlier mockery. Delegates spoke in hushed, serious tones, occasionally glancing toward the human section with expressions that suggested they were re-evaluating fundamental assumptions about biological limitations and tactical capabilities. The security review of today's incident has revealed several disturbing facts, continued Zethkar. First, the Void Hunters infiltrated our facility using technology we did not know they possessed. Second, they bypassed security systems that have protected this chamber for over a millennium. Third, they would have succeeded in their apparent assassination mission if not for the intervention of our guests. Sarah sat in the same position as before, but something had changed in how the other delegates perceived her presence. What had previously seemed like insignificant size now appeared to be deceptive compactness. Her stillness no longer suggested fragility, but rather the controlled calm of a predator conserving energy. Rex lay beside her chair, apparently sleeping, but every trained observer in the chamber could see that his ears continued to move, tracking sounds throughout the vast space. His breathing remained steady but alert, and his position provided clear sight lines to all entrances while keeping Sarah within his protective range. Ambassador Chen, Zethkar addressed her directly, the Council would appreciate a more detailed explanation of your species' capabilities. Your performance during the crisis suggests that our initial assessment may have been incomplete. Sarah stood with the same fluid grace she had displayed during combat, and several delegates noted that her movement patterns remained those of someone prepared for violence despite the peaceful setting. Honored Speaker, the Council's assessment wasn't wrong about human physical capabilities. We are indeed small, soft-skinned creatures from a moderate world. Our strength, speed, and durability fall well within average galactic ranges. She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. However, your evaluation focused on individual metrics rather than system integration. Explain this distinction, requested the Aquatic Alliance representative, her bioluminescent patterns indicating intense interest. Most galactic species evolved to excel in specific areas, Sarah replied. The Thermic Consortium developed superior physical durability and energy manipulation. The Klaxi achieved remarkable coordination and rapid reproduction. The Vortak combined size, strength, and technological integration. Each species represents a specialized solution to survival challenges. She gestured to Rex, who opened one eye at the attention but remained in his deceptively relaxed position. Humans evolved as generalists on a world that demanded adaptability above specialization. We're not the strongest, fastest, or toughest species, but we excel at learning, adapting, and integrating resources. More importantly, we develop symbiotic relationships with other Earth species that multiply our capabilities exponentially. The creature beside you, interrupted the Crystal and Sharai delegate, it performed combat actions that suggest intelligence approaching sentience. Yet your preliminary reports classified it as a domesticated animal. Rex is domesticated, Sarah confirmed, but that term doesn't mean what most galactic species think it means. On Earth, domestication isn't about reducing intelligence or capability. It's about creating partnerships that benefit both species. She activated her holographic projector, displaying images of various Earth animals working alongside humans. These are all domesticated species. Horses that can carry humans across vast distances and navigate terrain that would challenge most vehicles. Birds that can deliver messages across continents with perfect accuracy. Sea mammals that can locate underwater threats or resources that human technology might miss. The display shifted to show more examples: dogs detecting explosives, guiding blind humans, tracking criminals across urban environments, providing therapy to trauma victims. Domestication is a technology, Sarah explained. It's the process of creating interspecies partnerships that leverage the strengths of multiple biological systems. Rex doesn't just obey commands, he thinks, plans, and makes independent tactical decisions that complement human capabilities. During the attack, observed the Titan Collective's representative, your animal appeared to coordinate its actions with yours despite no visible communication. How is this possible without technological enhancement? Sarah smiled, and the expression sent subtle ripples of unease through several delegations. Rex and I communicate constantly. Body language, vocal tones, positioning, breathing patterns, chemical signals your species can't detect. We've trained together for years, developing a partnership language that operates below conscious awareness. Chemical signals? The ethereal delegate's gaseous form flickered with confusion. Pheromones, hormonal changes, stress indicators, Sarah explained. Humans and dogs evolved together for thousands of years. We can read each other's emotional and physical states through biological markers that require no conscious processing. Rex knew I was shifting into combat mode before I consciously decided to do so. Zethkar's hide shifted to colors indicating growing concern. Ambassador Chen, you described capabilities that sound remarkably similar to hive-mind coordination, but without the technological infrastructure such systems typically require. Not hive mind, Sarah corrected. Partnership mind. Multiple independent intelligences working together through evolved compatibility rather than imposed connection. It's more flexible than hive systems because each partner can function independently while remaining capable of seamless coordination. She looked around the chamber, noting how delegates were processing this information. Every human settlement includes multiple partner species. We don't just use tools, we partner with living systems that can adapt, learn, and respond to novel situations. A human military unit might include tracking specialists, detection specialists, communication specialists, and transportation specialists, all of different species but all thinking tactically as an integrated team. This is, stammered the Klaxi Queenspeaker, this suggests your species has weaponized evolution itself. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated the implications of this statement. Not weaponized, Sarah replied quietly. Partnered with. Earth taught us that survival isn't about defeating nature, it's about becoming part of it. We learn to work with natural systems instead of against them. Ambassador, Zethkar's voice carried a note of something approaching dread. How many partner species do humans typically work with? On Earth? We have active partnerships with over 300 species, ranging from food production to transportation to defense to environmental management. Off-world, we adapt by forming new partnerships with whatever local life forms prove compatible. 300 species, whispered the Aquatic Alliance representative. An entire ecosystem turned into a cooperative network. Ambassador Chen, the ethereal delegate's form had shifted to colors indicating alarm. What you describe is not just a species, it's an ecological system with intelligence. A biological network that can adapt, learn, and expand by incorporating new elements. Sarah nodded. That's exactly what we are. Humans aren't just individuals seeking council membership. We're representatives of an entire biological alliance that spans our world and is prepared to extend beyond it. And this alliance produces warriors capable of defeating void hunters? Zethkar asked. This alliance produces problem solvers capable of adapting to any challenge, Sarah corrected. Rex and I didn't defeat those void hunters through superior strength or advanced technology. We adapted faster than they could respond, used resources they didn't expect, and coordinated in ways their tactical programming couldn't predict. She paused, letting this sink in. The Void Hunters have terrorized the galaxy because they represent perfected predation, they're optimized killing machines with advanced technology and no psychological limitations. But they're also specialized. They have standard tactics, predictable responses, and fixed programming. Whereas humans learn. Every fight teaches us something new. Every partner species adds new capabilities. Every environment provides new resources to incorporate into our strategies. We don't just adapt to challenges, we evolve solutions that turn challenges into advantages. Rex chose that moment to stand and stretch, a simple animal behavior that somehow managed to remind every delegate in the chamber that they were watching a predator that had recently killed multiple void hunters with nothing but teeth and tactical intelligence. Honored delegates, Sarah continued, Earth's partnership network is interested in joining the galactic community not as subjects or conquerors, but as allies. We offer capabilities that complement existing galactic strengths while providing solutions to challenges that have traditionally required overwhelming force or technological superiority. Such as, prompted Zethkar. Exploration of hostile environments. Integration with unknown ecosystems. Adaptation to novel threats. Development of sustainable resource management. Creation of stable interspecies alliances. She smiled again, and, this time several delegates recognized the expression for what it was: not aggression, but invitation. The galaxy is vast and full of challenges that no single species can address alone. Humans specialize in making the impossible merely difficult, and the difficult routine. The chamber buzzed with discussion as delegates consulted with their home governments and scientific advisors. The nature of the conversation had fundamentally shifted from whether humans deserved council membership to what the implications of such membership might be. Ambassador, Zethkar said finally, assuming the council were to approve your membership application, what would humanity bring to our alliance? Sarah's expression grew serious, almost somber. Everything we've learned about survival, adaptation, and cooperation from the most challenging teacher in the galaxy. And the promise that whatever threatens the galactic community will have to get through Earth's children first. Rex barked once, a sound that somehow managed to convey absolute certainty and unwavering loyalty to every species present, regardless of their auditory biology. In that moment, delegates throughout the chamber began to understand that they weren't just voting on admitting a new species to the council. They were deciding whether to ally themselves with a force of nature that had learned to think.